Hello and welcome to Commotion tutorial number 2, Tracking and Match Move. I'm going to talk to you about a feature in Commotion called motion tracking and some of the techniques and thought processes that go into using this powerful tool. I want to start by showing the final movie that we'll be taking you through step by step. We have a nice dolly shot from the top of Green Street in San Francisco here, and you'll notice that there are a few unusual elements that we have added into the scene. Probably the first thing you noticed was a huge flying saucer flying behind the Transamerica Pyramid. There is also a duck waddling across the street here, a Commotion flag on the Green Street sign pole there, and last but not least, there's a subtle smoke cloud coming off of one of the apartments in the midground. All these elements have been added or composited into our shot using the motion tracker in Commotion. So let's stop this clip from playing here. We'll close it down. So I'm going to go up here to File and down to Import Footage. And you'll notice that we're passing by the Open command. And while both Import Footage and Open will actually bring footage into Commotion for us to work with, Open actually loads that footage into RAM. We're actually going to go down here to Import Footage because we want more RAM to use while we're working with our composition. Next, I'm going to select multiple files holding down the Shift key. And this is a really powerful feature that you will find very handy once you get very familiar with the other tools in Commotion. I'll go down here to Open, and the clips pop up in our clip window right here. Here's the duck clip we just imported and the San Francisco movie. Now with the San Francisco move selected, I'm going to go up to Composite and down to Make Composite. Now using our hotkey, I'm going to minimize that clip to give us a little bit more room. So next I want to go over here to our clip bin, and I want to actually drag the duck clip onto our composition. You'll notice that if we go down here to our timeline, the duck clip has actually appeared above San Francisco movie. Next I'm going to reveal the timeline pressing this button right here. Moving our player up, you'll notice that there's a couple of frame numbers here listed. We have our current frame on the playhead, the frame numbers of the comp, and the length of the actual clip. So we want to go down here to about frame 50 and slide our clip down so it starts on that frame. So next we want to go down and make sure that our duck movie is highlighted in blue as it is here. And we want to hit P to reveal its properties. And down here you'll find a few attributes to our clip. We have its anchor point, its position, scale, rotation, and opacity. These are all attributes that we can actually keyframe or change the values of over time. So I want to go down here to Scale, and using our rub text feature and the hotkey, I'm actually going to scale it down to about 45%. The other way to actually enter this information is numerically right here. By double clicking on this number, we can enter numerical values. So I'm going to enter 45% and click OK. Next we want to reposition the duck so he's actually on the ground. So again, let's use our rub text feature and actually click and drag the duck down into position. So because our duck movie is actually starting on frame 50, we want to avoid having it pop on during the course of our shot. So let's move him off screen right, so his beak is just peeking off the clip. Next we want to actually lay a keyframe for this position. This can be done by pressing this button right here. And now we want to move the playhead down to about frame 112. And by actually dragging within the comp window, we're going to slide this clip all the way over to the other side of the frame. We want to make sure we position the clip completely off the frame. Notice how another keyframe has been recorded at frame 112. Keyframing is the process of recording important or key frames, and in this case, instructing the computer to interpolate in between the positions that we have specified. Next we want to go up and actually click on this button right here. We can actually change our start and end frames that we wish to preview. So I'll enter 70 and 90. Click OK. You'll notice that the slider has actually shortened, symbolizing that our frame lengths, 70 and 90, are now shorter for the preview selected range. Next we want to go up to Composite and down to Preview Selected. This operation is going to cache the frames into memory to show us a real-time preview of what we have just worked on. Now if we zoom in on the duct itself, we'll notice that it is obviously not tracked to the background plate. While it would be possible to track the position of the element in frame by frame, Commotion has a much faster and more accurate solution to our problem. Let's open the motion tracking palette. I'm going to go up here to Windows and down to Motion Tracker. So you'll notice that the new tracker button right here, the icon is actually grayed out. And this is because tracking is actually on a clip basis rather than a comp basis. So what I want to do is go over to our clip window here, double click on the San Francisco movie, and again using our hotkey I want to minimize that. And again I want to set our in and out range by clicking on these buttons down here. I'm going to enter 50 for the start frame and 112 for the end frame. And again 50 and 112 for our in-out range. You'll notice that both the live frames and the in and out frames are the same length. Let's go up here to this button to load these frames into RAM. You'll now notice that this bar has turned green, symbolizing that these frames have been loaded into RAM. And once again, looking at our motion tracker palette, this icon is no longer grayed out. Start a new tracker. The next step requires a little bit of thought. Knowing how the motion tracker analyzes information is crucial to successfully tracking your background plate. You will notice that two small boxes have appeared symbolizing a new tracker has been created. The inside box right here is the actual region of the image that a computer will be searching for from frame to frame. This area that you pick must have a high contrast of either saturation or luminance values. The outside box right here is simply the area that the computer searches within to locate the information specified by the inside box. This box should be made large enough to allow movement of our background plate, but not so large as to add unnecessary computing time to the motion tracking process. So with that in mind, we're actually going to pick this small area right here on the ground. This is because this small oil spot is actually enough of a contrast within the luminance to gain a successful track all the way across the frame. We'll make our large box a little bit bigger here to allow for the motion of our background plate. And we'll make this inner side box just big enough to go around that oil spot. Next I'm going to go down here to this button named Track, and we'll find that a motion tracking options dialog box has appeared. We want our subpixel accuracy to be relatively high. This is due to the fact that the oil smudge, while being just enough for Commotion to handle, is still relatively difficult for any computer to track. And again, we want to track using luminance. This is because the luminance values have a greater contrast than the saturation values do. I'll go down here and click OK, and you'll notice that the tracker has successfully moved across the frame. If I actually play through this, notice the crosshairs are moving across the frame, accurately representing the motion of the background plate. So I'm going to stop the clip and minimize our San Francisco movie. And going back to the keyframes that we laid before, using our hotkey, click on the position and go down to delete all keyframes. Those keyframes were inaccurate and didn't work for us. Next, with our playhead at frame 50, I'm going to actually drag and drop track 0 onto the position attributes of our duct movie. A new window pops up. The defaults are going to work for us here, so I'm going to hit OK. And you'll notice that keyframes have been laid on every frame. This is the motion track data that we have just created and is now within the position attributes of our duct. So I'm going to close the motion tracker window. Now, because Commotion centered our clip around the motion tracker positions, we have to reposition it by dragging its anchor point down and to the right. I'm going to do this by rub texting on the anchor point right here. And you'll notice that our clip is actually moving up, yet the position keyframes are staying where they are. Now once again, we don't want our duct to pop on at frame 50, so let's move him just off screen right. And let's go down here and actually enter some numerical values that I know are correct. These values should be at 361 and 355. Let's change our frame range to 50 and 112. Go up to Composite down to Preview Selected so we can look at what we just worked on. Our computer is going to again cache those frames. You can see that our duck is now firmly planted on the surface of the road. There are, however, a couple of things we still have to do in order to really set the duck into our scene. Let's go back to our timeline. Let's go ahead and stop the playback and select our duck movie. And let's change our playhead to about frame 72 so we can see what we're looking at here. You can do this by clicking on this current frame number right here. We'll go to frame 72. First thing we're going to want to do is remove the appearance of blue spill around the edges of the duck element. Spill refers to the simple principle that light is going to bounce off of a blue screen, contaminating the objects around it. As you can see, the duck, very subtle effect of a blue wrapped edge. We're going to want to remove that. We're going to go up to Effects, down to Keying, and down to Spill Killer. Making sure the duck movie is selected, we want to hit the E key to reveal the effects properties of this clip. Now you notice the parameters for Spill Killer are all listed here in our timeline. All the parameters are listed under that effect. The first thing we want to do is actually change our screen color to blue screen, because that's the color screen that was used. We want to change our lower limit to 83.6 and color suppression to around 28.1. If I toggle the effect on and off, you'll notice we are able to see the effect in action. Next, we want to add a shadow to put the duck into the scene. I'm going to go up here to Effects, down to Stylize, and down to Real Shadows. For this filter, we have a graphical interface that resembles an inverted T, with the baseline on the bottom and the height and slant control pointing up from that. We're going to reveal the effects controls for Real Shadows. I'm going to bring the baseline down and line it up with the bottom of the duck's feet. And then I'm going to bring down the height and slant controls. Now you can either eye this, or you can add in the numbers, which are 363 and 451. Next, I'm going to go down here to reveal the properties of the Real Shadows filter. I'm going to bring the opacity down just a little bit to about 70, the softness to about 25, and you'll notice that a realistic shadow is now placed underneath the duck. Next, we want to color correct the duck to its surroundings. I'm going to go up here to Effects, down to Color Correct, and over to Composite Color Matcher. I'm going to click All for the original colors and All for the target colors. Next, I'm going to go down to reveal the properties of the Composite Color Matcher effect. I'm going to scroll down and set the target layer to the San Francisco movie. Essentially, what this filter is doing is taking the color palette of the background clip and making our element look like it was lit in the same scene with the same lighting. Let's go up here in the timeline and change our strength to about 65%. With all the effects added, I think you'll agree that a heightened sense of a reality is achieved. Let's go ahead and apply the motion blur and finish up with the duck element. So let's go up here, minimize all our effects controls. I'm going to go ahead and click on the motion blur button right here. And with that effect enabled, I'm going to go up here to Composite and down to Composite Settings. I'm going to reveal the Motion Blur Settings tab and switch this to Flow Blur. Click OK. And if we zoom in, I can toggle the effect on and off. So let's go ahead and preview our entire clip here, frames 50 to 112, by going up to Composite and down to Preview Selected. And with our preview completed, you can see the final duck element moving across the frame. Now I want to go through some of the optional aspects of this tutorial to increase your knowledge of how tracking works and to show you the wide range of visual effects an artist can achieve with a Commotion motion tracker. First, we'll add the subtle smoke effect I pointed out at the beginning of the tutorial. In this section, we'll describe how to get around the common problem of objects getting obscured during the course of a motion track. Let's get started. So let's stop our playback, drag our player to about frame 1, turn off the duck, and talk about motion tracking the smoke onto this chimney here. So the first thing we want to do is bring up our motion tracking palette once again. turn off our old track, and once again open up our San Francisco background plate, minimize it. By clicking on our new tracker button, we're going to create a new tracker named Track 1. Let's go ahead and change the name of that tracker. We'll call that Chimney Track. And let's go ahead and drag that over to our chimney and reposition it like so. And then we'll go down and press Track, set our parameters, and hit OK. We know this track is going to be fine until it gets to frame 96, right there, where it starts to lose itself. And as you can see, the tracker has been completely messed up. So what we want to do is scroll back to about frame 90, to where we know the tracker was accurate. By clicking on this button right here, we're able to bring up our tracking boxes once again. So let's go ahead and reposition this tracker above and around this window. Adjust our selection to start at frame 90, and once again down to track. This time we want to actually press the Continue to Track Off-Screen Objects button. And our track will continue. Until once again it is lost. We will scroll back, bring up our tracking box, and reposition it around this set of windows right here. Another great feature about Motion Tracker is you can go down to this Tracker Zoom option. Let's go down to about 4:1, and you'll notice that a zoomed in version of our Motion Tracker is brought up within the comp window. We will press Track once again, making sure Continue to Track Off-Screen Objects is selected, and we will hit OK. Since we forgot to adjust the in and out selection range of our frames, Commotion is asking us if we want to adjust that now. The answer is yes. And the tracker is complete. You'll notice that even though we tracked 3 multiple points during the course of this shot, the track is one smooth, complete line. This is where the Continue Off-Screen Objects command comes in handy. Now it's time to create a chimney smoke element with Brimstone. Because of our time constraints, however, we won't be explaining how to create elements such as these until later in the tutorial series. For now, we'll just import a pre-rendered footage file called chimneysmoke.move. I'm going to go up here to File, Import Footage, and double-click on chimneysmoke.move. Let's open up this clip and take a look at it. We're going to load the frames into RAM and press the play button. As we watch this clip, keep in mind that the reason it looks so rough is because the RGB contains no transparency information. If I stop the clip and switch our viewing channel to the alpha, we'll notice that a nice clean edge density is realized. This channel will mask out our RGB information when we bring the clip into our composition. Let's close the clip and drag it into our composition. In order to bring up the tracker that we just created, we need to double-click on the San Francisco clip down here. As you can see, Chimney Track has appeared once again in the Motion Tracker palette. Let's go down to our chimney layer, and by pressing the P key, we're going to open up its parameters. Next, I'm going to scroll down to reveal the position parameter. Now, dragging the chimney track down to the position parameter, Apply Tracker Data window opens up once again. We will hit OK, and as before, all the keyframes for the position track of our smoke are now in the timeline. Let's go ahead and pick our zoom tool by opening up our tool palette and selecting the magnifying glass. Next, I'm going to collapse the tool palette and then zoom in on our chimney stack. And by using the rub text feature on our anchor point, I'm going to position the smoke just above the chimney stack. Zoom back out. Make sure our frame range is correct, 50 to 112, and go up to Composite and Preview selected. As you can see, the smoke is tracked very nicely to the chimney stack. So with these elements added, I'd say we've done a pretty good job of enhancing our San Francisco vista while still maintaining a great deal of realism. However, there are still a number of other things you can do with track data. In this quick lesson, the believability of our shot will be compromised, but I think you'll agree that adding a flying saucer hovering over the San Francisco skyline will make it worth it. One of the most powerful features is the ability to track multiple points in a scene, then use that track data to actually calculate accurate rotation and scale values. Let's start by turning off the smoke layer we just created. Next, I'm going to open up our San Francisco background plate. And let's take a look at our background plate once again. Now suppose you wanted to insert a flying saucer into this shot, and you were going to attempt to use the same techniques that we used to motion track the duck to the street. The flying saucer would move correctly horizontally and vertically, but it would still look fake because it wouldn't rotate with its surroundings. Tracking 2 points and using them together will solve this problem. I'm going to go ahead and stop the playback. And we'll move our playhead back to frame 1. Let's go up to Windows and down to Motion Tracker. Let's go ahead and turn off both these trackers and create 2 new ones. We'll name track number 2 Pyramid, and track number 3 we'll call Street. So before we begin tracking, let's advance to frame 50, the beginning of our selection range. I'm going to go ahead and move this street tracker to the end of the street here. The default size will work there. Then we'll take our pyramid tracker and we'll move that tracker up on this shoulder of the Transamerica Pyramid. Next, we want to select both the pyramid and street trackers together so we can track both at the same time. I'm going to go up here to the track button, change our subpixel accuracy up 1 notch to about 1/32, and click OK. So as you can see, both trackers have tracked the positions that we have given to them. Next, we're going to go up to our clip window here and bring down the UFO movie into the timeline. So with the motion tracking complete, let's go ahead and add the match move data to our UFO movie. Using our hotkey, and go down to match move layer. We want to change match move the motion about the street tracker. That's because the street tracker that we just created is the centermost point on our clip. We also want to add rotation and scale, so we'll click on this dialog box here, and we'll keep that on the pyramid tracker. Let's go ahead and click OK. So let's go ahead and reveal the properties of our UFO clip to make sure that the keyframes have been added properly. I'll scroll down, and as you can see, underneath the position and rotation, the keyframes are now in the timeline. So let's go ahead and close the San Francisco movie clip that we used to track and bring up our comp window. So as you can see, the position keyframes have been added to our UFO clip. Let's go ahead and go up and make a preview selected of this range to see how the motion tracking worked. Now suppose we wanted to make the flying saucer go behind these buildings here, and again behind these houses on this corner. To do this, we'll have to create a mask for these elements, and there are a couple of ways you might go about doing this. You could roto around the edges of the skyline with rotosplines to render a great looking matte, but I usually tend to look for any way I can to get out of that situation. Notice how perfectly clear our sky is in this shot. This random act of nature is going to save us many hours of needless roto. When you have a situation like this, it is very possible to pull what is called a key. So let's open up this track matte movie that I've already imported into our project. If you play through this a little, you'll notice that we have pre-rendered a matte of the San Francisco skyline. Let's stop the playback, close up that track matte, and bring it down into the bottom of our timeline. Next, we're going to select the San Francisco movie and duplicate it so we can use a track matte of this clip. I'm going to go to Edit and down to Duplicate Layers. So before we drag the San Francisco movie up to the top, let's turn off the old San Francisco movie and the track matte that we were using on the bottom, and drag the new San Francisco clip up to the top. Using our hotkey, add a track matte to this layer. Then by hitting the M key, we're going to reveal the track matte properties. Here, we want to go down and select the track matte movie and switch this to luminance. As you can see, a track matte has appeared, although it is inverse and incorrect. So now I'm going to go down to this button, which will inverse our track map. As you can see, the sky has been removed and now the buildings are in the foreground. Let's go ahead and contract all our layers by pressing this button and going down to contract all. All the layers close up. And we'll go ahead and turn back on our UFO movie, which now appears behind the buildings because it is behind them in the layer timeline. Let's go back down here and turn on the old San Francisco movie to put the sky back in the background. Go up to Composite and preview our selected range once again. So as you can see, we have successfully tracked the position and rotation of our UFO clip and composited it in the San Francisco movie behind all the buildings.